If hard work made people rich, most of you listening to this would already be extremely wealthy, but you aren't, and that's not an accident. The truth is, the way that you've been taught to pursue money is almost perfectly designed to keep you stressed, obedient, and financially in jail. Not because you're lazy and not because you're incapable, but because you've been trained to play a game that cannot be won from where you're standing. See, most people don't fail financially because they lack discipline. They fail because they follow instructions. They do what they're told, like good little boys and girls, and they do what sounds responsible, and they do what society claps for. And year after year, nothing changes. If I were your enemy, and if I genuinely wanted to keep you broke for life, I would not steal from you outright, and I wouldn't sabotage your career or destroy your reputation. That's amateur. I would simply give you advice. I would sit you down, I'd look you in the eye, and I'd calmly teach you everything that society already teaches you. I would convince you that hard work is the primary driver of wealth, and I would tell you that staying safe is the same thing as being smart. I would teach you to be proud of how busy you are, because as long as you believe that, you'll never notice the game you're actually playing. So the first thing I would do is manufacture your morality. I would link your self-worth to your work ethic. I want you to feel proud of being the first one in the office. Maybe you even unlock the door as a manager, and then being the last one to leave. I'd want you to brag about how exhausted you are. I'd want your identity wrapped around being reliable and dependable. Why? Because as long as you're trading hours for dollars, your upside is capped. You are a finite resource like a battery. You can only work so many hours before you burn out, and you can only push so hard before your body or your family or your sanity breaks. But ownership doesn't just burn out. Systems don't get tired. I would make sure you believe that labor is the only honest way to make money. I'd want you to look at leverage, equity, or passive income with suspicion and be ultimately skeptical of all of them. I'd want you to dismiss them as scams from a position of moral superiority. See, honest poverty is very easy to control. We're all raised inside of a story, and it's a good one, a comforting one. We're told to work hard, be patient, save our money, and follow the rules, and someday we're gonna make it. If I were your enemy, I'd repeat that story to you from being a small child. I'd make sure you believe that if you just keep climbing, eventually you're gonna reach the top. I just wouldn't tell you that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. Next, I'd teach you to worship safety. I'd tell you to put your money in a savings account and call it responsibility. I'd praise you for earning a measly 2% interest, while inflation quietly strips away 5 or 10% of your purchasing power every year. I'd watch you work 40 hours a week for money that loses value while you sleep each night. And I'd make you terrified of debt. I'd teach you that all debt is evil, that owning anyone, anything is a moral failure. I'd teach you that loans are shackles, not tools of leverage, because if I can keep you afraid of debt, I can keep you from ever using it as leverage to advance. While people who understand this system, they're gonna laugh at this because they're using low interest loans to acquire cash flowing assets, and I'd have you saving for years to buy something outright, only to discover that the price doubled before you ever caught up. Then if you were my enemy, I'd tell you you're doing great because you don't owe anyone anything. I'd teach you that zero debt is your goal. And I wouldn't tell you that freedom is the absence of debt. I'd tell you freedom is the presence of options. Here's what I mean. If I were your enemy, I would make sure you never understood how taxes actually work. I'd want you to celebrate your measly tax refund every year, not realizing you just gave the government an interest-free loan while you struggled to pay your own bills. I would make sure you stayed as a W-2 employee where you are taxed on every dollar before it even hits your bank account. I'd want you to earn a high salary but have no way to protect it. I would keep you away from business structures, corporations, and depreciation, ensuring that for every 3 steps you take forward, the system pulls you back. Then I'd want you to think that taxes are just a price we pay for freedom, while the truly wealthy are using the tax code, which is really just a series of incentives for owners to pay near zero. I'd keep you in the dark focusing on your gross pay while I quietly bleed your net worth dry. To keep an enemy broke, you don't need to take their money all at once. You just need to ensure that they are inefficient versions of their highest self. Then, I'd keep you permanently preparing. I'd encourage you to collect degrees, certifications, and credentials for your LinkedIn. I'd tell you knowledge is power, but I'd never let you apply it. I'd keep you in the learning phase of life forever, because as long as you're studying, you're not building. You pose no threat to me. As long as you're preparing, you're not producing. I'd feed you the just one more credential drug. And then I'd get you to do just one more semester, just one more book, just one more year of experience, because the most dangerous person in any system is someone who understands how it actually works, but most importantly, applies it into action. So I wouldn't ban those ideas. I'd bury them under endless theoretical constructs. I'd make you highly educated on paper, but economically harmless in motion. Then I'd encourage you to specialize in something easily replaced by AI or cheap labor overseas. I'd turn you into a cog and call you a key player. I'd keep you focused on linear income, time in, money out, while keeping you blind to asymmetric opportunity, where the real downside is limited and the upside is uncapped. And finally, to seal it all off, I'd make you crave my approval. I'd want you to spend what little money you have trying to look like you're not broke. I'd want you to buy things you couldn't afford to impress people who don't even respect you. They wouldn't even come to your funeral. I'd want you chasing status instead of ownership. Status is a zero-sum game though. So for you to win, someone else has to lose, but wealth isn't like that. Wealth is created. Look, if I can keep you focused on looking successful, I can guarantee you never become free. I'd make you terrified of embarrassment, terrified of looking foolish. Because if you're afraid to look stupid, you're easy for me to control, so you'll stay in your own lane. You'll keep your head down and you'll keep doing what you're told like a good little worker bee and stay broke. Now, let me be clear. I am not your enemy. I don't want you broke. In fact, quite the opposite. But the system that you live in, your country, and the institutions you trust, the traditional career paths, the banks, the schools, they behave exactly like the enemy I just described. They don't want you owning assets. They want you selling labor. They don't want you using leverage. They want you predictable and showing up every single day. So what do you do about this? You don't quit your job tomorrow. You don't blow up your life and leave your family. You get honest with where you are. You stop confusing obedience with intelligence, and you begin shifting slowly, deliberately from being a worker trapped in the system to being a builder of systems. It will not be glamorous. It's going to be quiet, and it often means working your job while building your equity on the side. It means being comfortable looking unsuccessful for a few years so you don't stay trapped for the next 40 years. And once you see the game for what it is, you can never unsee it again. You can't choose any other way of living your life, because this is the only way for you to acquire freedom. So you start looking for equity instead of approval. You prioritize assets instead of applause, and you seek ownership instead of permission. Then you start realizing that the safe path was the riskiest thing you could have ever done with your life. You realize that the responsible advice was actually a blueprint for a quiet life of desperation. Now, that choice won't change your life overnight, but it will change its trajectory. And one day, you're gonna realize you're no longer tired, anxious, or dependent on a system that never gave a damn about you. Not because you got lucky, and not because you were special, but because you finally stopped playing the game that was designed to keep you broke. You stopped listening to the advice of your enemies, and you finally started listening to the truth. If you like this video, hit the subscribe button to join the most aspirational people on YouTube. You can watch my last video right here, and I'll see you in the trenches.